And Formula One Philosophy is back for another preseason episode. We're getting ready for 2026, what is going to be a very interesting year. This episode is about recapping what we saw in the first 2 stints of testing. So as everybody knows, this year there's 3 testing dates. And we've already been through 2, which is amazing. Like this year's already flying by. And Sean and I are just going to give a quick recap on some of the news items that came out of that. As always, F1_philosophy at Instagram, F1 Philosophy at YouTube, and F1PhilosophyPod at gmail.com to ask any questions that you want us to specifically answer. Sean, how are you today?
I'm all right, Nick. We had a holiday here in Ontario, at least. So that was fun. Short week for us.
Because everybody in Ontario is working so damn hard. I'm not. Does that sound sarcastic? I wasn't trying to be sarcastic. Wink.
Just accept that it didn't land, Nick. Okay. Move on.
All right. A lot of stuff has happened in testing already. Well, at least a lot of newest items. Like there hasn't really been that much that's happened. Nothing set in stone until race 1, until Q1, right? I'm not sure how long How long do you know off by heart how long Q1 is going to be this year? Now that there's 22 teams, did they change that time slot or?
No, stays the same.
Cool.
They changed the number of people that they changed because there's 22 drivers, they've changed a cutoff point.
Right, 6 get eliminated in the first 2 now instead of 5. Yeah. All right. But like I said, there's some news items to come out of that. Who's actually good, nobody knows. And everybody's talking about how the other team is really good. It's like like a bunch of kids who all stole from the cookie jar, blaming each other. Also, are these regulations actually good? We've had a few voices say no. All of them above the age, or 2 of them above the age of 40, which is interesting. And just general takes of what you got from testing, Sean. What do you want to talk about when you look through what you've seen in testing?
Sure. So I think I need to correct you because I agree with the way you've said it. But F1 and the teams wanted to make it very clear. It's only been 1 session of testing.
Oh, okay.
The first one was a shakedown organized by the teams, and no one was allowed in. Right? They had security patrolling the perimeter of the track, kicking out anybody who tried. And they weren't going to have, what's it called? Live timing for any of it. But somehow on the first day, like the first 4 hours went out live. There was a Spanish outlet broadcasting the times for the first 4 hours.
Of course.
So, a couple of hiccups there.
Yeah.
But I bring it up to point out a couple of things, right? The media is very quick to jump on anything that sounds dramatic, as we know. And a lot of people made a lot of noise about Williams wasn't there. Williams didn't make it. They failed again. Aston Martin didn't show up until the second last day and only ran a handful of laps. We have to realize that it was a shakedown, regardless of who set it up and why. It was a shakedown ahead of preseason testing. They did that because they were paranoid about reproducing what happened with the last engine regulation change, where everything was just so bad and it made all the teams look amateur. But what they did, in a sense, was handicap themselves by taking 2 to 3 weeks out of their timeline. Right? They put this self-imposed shakedown test in Barcelona, which still takes time to get to from England, and said we have to get there a week ahead of, or basically 2 weeks before we go testing in Bahrain. So they handicapped their timeline by 2 weeks. to get out to not make an ass of themselves, and frankly ended up making an ass of themselves. Nobody had a problem getting to Bahrain. And frankly, nobody had an issue in Barcelona, really. I would say everything ran better than anyone expected.
Hmm.
And you and I touched on this before. I was pretty, or maybe it was over text messages, that I was pretty certain these guys would have had a handle on the reliability this time around. And lo and behold, we haven't really had any issues. So this has been my big thing with testing. It's that everybody kind of freaked the fuck out over these regulation changes. And yes, they're different, but this is not the earth-moving change that 2014 was.
Depends on who you ask, right?
Well, let's get into that.
Yeah, if you ask two drivers that probably should have retired 5 years ago, at least, in the case of Alonso, this is horrible. This is the worst cars they've ever driven. These are no fun. They're, like Lewis Hamilton said, too complicated. And Max says they're anti-F1 racing. What are your thoughts on that?
This is a bunch of people that don't like change.
Mm-hmm.
I expect that from Alonso for more than one reason. One, he's, let's say, old school F1, doesn't like change in general, and makes any excuse to blame something other than his own driving ability.
Mm-hmm.
Hamilton, I've heard conflicting things come out of Hamilton. Yes, he has said that they're too complicated, which to me goes to his age and his experience level. This is new for him, so it's complicated. But he's also said that the cars are better to drive. They're more lively. You feel more through them, which makes a lot of sense. They're smaller, they're more nimble.
Mm-hmm.
So it is what they want. So, again, don't latch on to everything that they say. Are the cars more complicated to drive? Yes. But if we throw it back to some of the conversations that we've had about F1 cars being too easy to drive, all that they've done is take away those aids to make them more difficult to drive. I'm not sure how much of testing you've caught, but there's a big discussion about the starts.
Yes.
What's going to happen on the starts? And they have to rev them up so high. Do you realize why that is?
Haven't they had a button for their starts for the last 10, 15 years or something like that?
They have had a start mode, and they will still have a start mode now. But the MGU-H was an electric motor attached to the turbo. So the MGU-H generated electricity through the heat coming through the exhaust system and used that to basically spin a small electric motor attached to the turbo. And a turbocharger typically doesn't spin unless there's exhaust gas moving through it. Mm. So the higher the engine revs, the faster the turbo spools. And a turbo will spin at up to 100,000 RPM. They spin extremely fast. And in the previous generation, they were making 4 bar of pressure. So they were reliant on that MGU-H to keep the turbo spooled, to keep it running faster than the exhaust gas wanted to spin it. And that was one of the benefits of that device. Mm. They've got rid of the MGU-H, and now they have to drive a turbo car like the rest of us peasants. Turbo lag is a thing. It wasn't a thing in F1, but it's a thing in every other vehicle. And that's their problem. They don't have enough power without the turbo spooled. And that's what they're not used to. But someone made the connection saying that the F2 cars are exactly that way. F2 does not have anything spooling the turbo artificially. So that's going I think it was actually Charles Leclerc said it's going to be like what we see in F2, where if you screw up the start, you get a whole lot of anti-stall, and then you end up with 2 or 3 people who can't get off the grid. I expect that out of an F2 driver.
Isaac Hadjar in 2024, his final race.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
Yes. I would hope that an F1 driver is not so reliant on these nanny systems to help them get off the line. Right? If they need to spool that turbo to build boost, they got to find a way to do it. And I think that's where the creativity will come in handy. But this is also not a new issue. Back in the 70s, I want to say, when they first had blown diffusers and turbocharged cars, this is what they did. You had to rev them up. Drivers would not downshift in corners. You would go into a corner, add a gear, basically pull the clutch, rev the engine, shift your gear, back when they had H-pattern gearboxes, shift your gear and exit the corner where you wanted. So you were revving the engine through the corner in neutral to build the boost and everything else that you needed. That's where you get the creativity of the drivers coming in to actually benefit what they're doing. So I hear the negativity coming out. I think this is what we were talking about the other day, where there is some individuality in these cars now that will be able to set drivers apart.
That's good. I'm glad to hear stuff like that. I'm glad that you explained that, because I was just, reading all that stuff, not understanding, and didn't know what to make of it, heads or tails wise. What you essentially just said was that everyone complaining is Paul Walker, and if you want to be a good driver, you have to be Vin Diesel in The Fast and the Furious, and you have to stop granny shifting and start double clutching like you should. I'm not sorry. I saw the look on your face there. You were thinking I was saying Paul Walker in a bad time. No, I'm talking Paul Walker in The Fast and the Furious. I wasn't trying to make a joke here until I saw your face, so that's on you.
There's a lot about that movie that's not great, but it should not be used as a reference for how to drive a car.
Obviously not, but that's where my mind went.
Of course.
Before we get into more preseason stuff, I just want to put a bow on testing with a couple questions to you. One, what did you think about Max's comments? And two, based on what you said at the beginning involving a non-necessarily mandatory shakedown that kind of screwed a bunch of teams, does that mean Williams is not actually on the back foot? Does that mean Williams spent more time developing, as they should have, to focus on Bahrain? Or do you think Williams actually is on the back foot?
Well, James Vowles came out and talked about why they didn't make it. So they were planning on making it to Barcelona, and they missed their deadline. So if that's the case, then yes, they legitimately had a problem, and it may indicate that they're still not where they need to be on resources and timing and everything else. So they may be behind their targets elsewhere. But they showed up in Bahrain, and they showed up with a car, and that car is banged around the track more or less without issue for two drivers for 3 days. I want to say every team now has put in multiple Grand Prix distances within the week. So I don't think they're necessarily on the back foot from a performance or initial car stage. But it's clear that they still lack some of the stuff that the other teams don't.
And as for Max?
You're talking about his comments that it's basically like a Formula E derivative?
Yes.
I think it's nonsense. I mean, Max is the one that got out there and testing and showed everybody else how to drive the fucking car. Right? Pulling an extra gear going into the corner, and everybody went, oh shit, that's what we have to do. That's the super clip they're talking about. Yeah, exactly. Go out and drive it like you haven't had an MGUH. Right? So, I don't think there's much in it. This is all new, and nobody likes to change. So they will get used to it, and those that can't will probably promptly find their way out of the sport.
I'm happy when he speaks out. I am. But at the same time, you couldn't wait till the end of race one? Really? Like you couldn't keep it to yourself? Like, relax. We haven't even had a race yet. There might be some serious issues here. And it's good that we have someone like you who understands things that can maybe help fix it. But you didn't need to go on like a tirade. And maybe the media just overblew it. He was just making an offhanded remark. Maybe he was just tired. But wait till race 1, please. That's what I would say.
No, but I think this is just it, right? Like, and this is part of the reason they didn't want media at the shakedown, because when things go bad, people say things that aren't ideal, and then it sticks as a narrative, right? And it's the same thing in testing. Max probably wasn't feeling great. They probably had some things they were working around in the car, trying different setups, whatever. And he said what he felt. And the media's latched onto it. I didn't give it much credence because it's a ridiculous comment. Formula E has no internal combustion. It's all electric. So it's not Formula E on steroids, because you still have that aspect of a proper internal combustion car. You've mixed the two, clear, but it is actually a benefit from a racing standpoint because you get more instantaneous power than you would with a normal ICE. But at the same time, Formula E on steroids doesn't sound too bad to me. Because Formula E is not great.
No.
It needs something to kick it in the ass. And if that thing is an internal combustion engine attached to the electric part of it with better aerodynamics and not cars that are built to the same spec, great. What's the problem?
Well said.
So it's stupid comments that the media picks up on and then makes a narrative because whatever, all the shit that you've railed against for the last 3 years, however long we've been doing this.
Yeah, but like I said, this is New Year, New Nick. So I'm trying not to fly off the handle. And when I saw that, I said, just relax, man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Well, exactly. There might be issues. There might be problems. But like in 2009 when there were problems, they figured it out halfway through the season. And then they created 15 years. So, yeah. You'll be fine.
But they're already talking about some of this stuff too, right? They're talking about having a mandatory 10-second pause from the time the grid forms up to the lights going out. So basically you would get your 5 red lights over the period of 10 seconds, and then the lights would go out at their random interval. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to do in response to, well, the car has to sit there and build pressure. I don't buy it. I think you should just do it the way you do it in F2 because, hey, it fucking works. But also, why not have a start system that is more reliant on the electric energy? Yeah. I guarantee you, with the power that those electric motors are putting out, you're capable of getting off the line with just the electric motor. So why do you need to spool the engine up?
Interesting.
There are creative ways around this. Someone's just got to do it and stop complaining to the media about it.
Yeah. And hopefully this extra testing will create solutions like this. That's the one benefit, yeah. So, as usual, shut up, media. We're the media. Okay.
And the drivers.
Well, I don't blame it. Like I said, with Max, I think you're tired. You've just spent 12 hours around a car, right? Or 12 hours working. Some of it in the car, some in the garage. You might make some offhanded comments. That's what I think happened there. Yeah. Last question.
There have been.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
There have been a couple of interesting things that have come out of it, where because now it's 50-50 split electric and combustion, you're seeing the drivers be a lot more cautious in the lines that they're taking. They tend to go into corners wider so that they're not having to put as much pedal down on the exit, because you have, with an electric motor, you have instantaneous torque. So now that it's 50-50, as they come out of the corner, if they're too shallow and they try and overcome it with more gas, they end up spinning, or they end up having a moment and it costs them time. So if they go in wider and they exit wider, you'll see a lot of them running very tight up to the line on exit and riding the line longer to keep the car straight. Because if they're trying to correct like they were in the past, it ends up with them having a moment, which is an interesting quirk of the design of the car. And it could lead to some jeopardy in how these cars respond. because again, they are more nimble. They are a little more um, nervous, let's say, because they're smaller now.
More erratic qualifying if you make a small mistake, and fortune favors the bold if you take the inside line, if you can figure out a way. That might fix the issue that Alcon brought up, that he's worried there's going to be problems with passing, which is like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's an Ocon problem. That's not anybody else's problem.
Correct. Yeah.
But just to top that one off, when the cars were larger, longer, wider, they were more stable at high speed. That's a byproduct of that package. So it was harder to get them to turn, to get them to rotate. And once they started to over-rotate, it was easier to correct them. What we're seeing now is that they want to turn in faster, so you're getting a more dynamic cornering event, but it's also going to turn too far too quickly. You're going to lose it faster. But they do seem to be more controllable when you lose it. So it's going to be easier to recover when you lose it. So there's a couple of different things that play into it, and it's interesting.
Sounds like a very thin window of operation, almost like a certain someone's Red Bull.
It could be, yeah.
Interesting. Last question before we get into other things. What's the deal with Mercedes? Do you think they're sandbagging, or do you think they actually have some issues?
No, they're all sandbagging. Toto wants this engine thing to go away, and he wants to point to it and say, look, we didn't benefit anything in testing, so fuck off. And then nobody else wants to look to be doing anything out of the ordinary, so they're not trying to ruffle any feathers. We'll see more of it this week in testing. And then come Australia, we'll see who's really on top.
Yep. Nothing's in stone. Even
No.
I'm gonna say up until end of May, nothing's in stone.
Yeah, quite possibly.
All right. Sorry. Go on.
Sorry. One final thing, I promise. It wouldn't surprise me to come Wednesday this week, see different cars in Bahrain again.
Ooh.
Right? Audi brought a different car to Bahrain. I guarantee you somebody else is going to turn up with a drastically different car this week.
Aston Martin has nothing to lose.
We'll see.
Yeah. As you can see, everybody, Sean is priceless. A priceless person to have as these new regulation changes happen. He's a fountain of knowledge with this stuff. He is an actual engineer. Listen intently. Listen to what he's saying. Like I said, preseason, it's important. Instead of just latching on to every media comment or every driver comment, maybe there's more to the story. I think you and I dissected everything pretty well just now.
Oh, thank you for that, Nick.
There's
a lot.
I was going to say, take the damn compliment. Yeah.
No, thank you for that. There's a lot in there that we didn't discuss, but I don't think we have time to go through all the nitty gritty about wings and what I saw. So we'll leave it there for testing.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll bring up some of the other stuff along the way.
Yeah. After testing into our predictions, I think we'll discuss more of that stuff. All right. As I said, f1philosophypod@gmail.com. Any questions you have about this stuff, we'll be happy to answer. All right. We'll be back.